I'm holding up one of the best keyboards of last year, the Evo80. And now there's a new contender in town, the EvoWorks Evo75, with a smaller and more compact 75% size. Now, if EvoWorks played their cards right by taking everything the Evo80 had, but just made it smaller, then in theory, this would easily be the best keyboard of this year, and maybe even future years. But instead of keeping what made the Evo80 amazing and just shrinking it, they changed a lot of things. Some were for the better, others, not so much. So with these changes, should you even consider the Evo75? Did EvoWorks miss out on an easy win here? Can this still be the new recommendation for a one and done keyboard? Let's find out. So when the Evo80 came out last year, it wasn't just another expensive premium mechanical keyboard. In fact, it was one of the first times that a custom keyboard company tried to make premium keyboards more accessible and more affordable. And they succeeded. Instead of being a build-it-yourself keyboard, they did it for you. It comes in a box like this, and at a significantly lower price than keyboards before it, at $169 instead of like $300, $400, $500 plus dollars. The Evo80 punched way above its price tag with a full aluminum case, a creamy thock sound, and just overall great design. For me, it was a personal favorite since they solved a problem that most keyboards just hadn't yet: the extremely tall front and uncomfortable typing angle. The Evo80 feels shorter and it's much more ergonomic than most luxury keyboards. Now, a year later, I still feel like it's one of the best keyboards out there on the market. It still costs $169, and it's almost perfect, except one thing. The size was a bit too big since it's a 10 keyless keyboard instead of a more compact layout like a 75 or 65%. So naturally, when I heard EvoWorks was making a 75% version, I had high hopes. It was exactly what we've all been waiting for, a new contender for the best keyboard of 2025. So did EvoWorks do it and claim the top spot? That's what we're here to find out. So when I first got the Evo75 and unboxed it, I got pretty excited. They include a nice carrying case with a bunch of the typical accessories, including a 2.4 GHz dongle, some extra keycaps and switches, and an ultra simple charging cable, which I'm not gonna complain because they at least included it, but I think they could have done a little bit better. And it's a beautiful purple design with tri-colored keycaps. The back plate looks solid, and the keyboard itself is super heavy. And they even included a huge quality of life upgrade, an external toggle to turn the keyboard on and off. Finally someone has done it. No more taking off keycaps and using your pencils or your tweezers just to turn a keyboard on. Finally. So at this point, I seriously thought, wow, they've done it. This could be the keyboard to rule them all. But that's just the initial impression. As I used it more and more, I realized that EvoWorks might not have nailed it quite like they did with the Evo80. Despite that though, there are some really good changes that they've made to this keyboard. And after about a week of using it as my only keyboard, I think I've finally figured out the good and the not so good parts of the Evo75. For some of you, the good will prevail. But for others, you might want to pass on this one. But before we can address that, let's look at the things that remain the same as the Evo80, because a lot of things haven't changed. If you're into tinkering with your keyboard and changing its sound and foam and all the configurations, then the Evo75 lets you do that easily. Instead of looking for screws all around and taking off keycaps to open your keyboard, all you have to do is pull the top plate up and push on the middle to reveal its innards. So the top and bottom pieces are held together by a ball catch design, and you can take away the foams really easily to see the different sounds that it can make. It also has the same magnetic pogo stick at the bottom here, so you don't have to fiddle with any ribbon cables. Boom, boom. The Evo80 has a cushioned mounting style, so does the 75, to give you a nice and soft typing feel by using these leaf springs here at the bottom case. Pretty the same as the Evo80. So if you love a beautiful keyboard that could double as a piece of artwork, the Evo75 takes the cake. They went all out with this design. They've taken the same design language as the Evo80 with the curves, and they just kicked it up a couple notches. It's still curved on the edges. You can pick it up with the sides easily, which is good because without this cutout, out, it's almost impossible to pick up with how heavy it is. In addition, they've added a front lip along the edges, which I admit, it looks great, but it could be a problem that we'll talk about later on. They've also added some lighting accents that make the keyboard look almost steampunk. There's some next to the F row, F1 and F12, and this key here. So next is something that I've been waiting for premium keyboards to do for ages now, and it's a huge quality of life improvement. It's also something that's been stopping me from recommending a lot of premium keyboards in the first place, especially to friends and family members who happen to not be super into tech or want to read manuals. They need their keyboards to be intuitive, and the Evo75's done it. So on the top side, you got the USB-C port, which most people know how to plug things in, and you have a toggle between Bluetooth, wired, and 2.4. So both wired and 2.4 mode work great for low latency things like gaming or ultra fast typing like me, since they connect with 1000 Hertz polling rate, and Bluetooth is a lot slower, but you get more battery life out of it at 125 Hertz. That's pretty typical for Bluetooth. This new toggle switch is a huge win for keyboard companies. I hope everyone looks to this and thinks, the golden standard. So now keyboards can look great and sound great and be convenient enough for most people to use them, like how most plastic keyboards are. And being a 75% keyboard, it has most of the keys that majority of people need to use. However, it's currently missing a key that some people may find annoying, but we'll get into that later. So one of the things that's scary about buying a premium mechanical keyboard is the decision-making aspect. Like, what switches do you buy? What keycaps? What plate? Gosh, how do you even put it together? The Evo75 follows the Evo80 in that it just has a limited number of options you can pick from, which initially that may sound bad, that, oh no, less options, but it also means that they've tested a ton of different plate and switch combinations to give you the best sounding ones. So for sounds, you got two options. You got a creamy option and a clacky option, and that's it. The creamy, I mean the thocky option includes a super soft and flexible polypropylene, also known as a PP plate, and their new Rise switch. It has a ton of bounce, so it'll have a more cushioned typing feel and a more muted and low pitch sound, aka thocky. The clacky option, which is the one that I have, has a more high-pitched sound. It comes with an FR4 plate and their new Amber switch. FR4 is a little bit stiffer. It absorbs a bit less sound. Now, I don't quite have an apples-to-apples comparison, but I do have a thocky config on my Evo80 and a clacky config on my Evo75, even though the switches are a bit different. So the thocky version feels a lot softer, whereas the clacky one feels stiffer, but it gives you a crispier sound, if that makes sense. So you just pick your preferred feel and sound, and then it comes with 10 color options, which, let's be real, they did a really good job with the keycap and case combinations. Personally, I would go for the thocky version and either Nebula or Basalt Gray. They're neutral, they're gorgeous, they fit pretty much any setup, and instead of building it yourself, it's shipped straight to your door in a case, completely built and just ready to go out of the box. Now, this is definitely one of the first premium keyboards where I feel like I can give it to a random family member without prior tech experience and they could use it. The only thing I would ask for is like just label your toggle switch, because it's hard to know what left and right would be. Now, you know, I've been on a journey to find the best keyboard of 2025, and the Evo75 at a first glance has improved and fixed a lot of problems that keyboards have suffered from for centuries, if they've existed that long. But the more time I spent using this keyboard, the more I realized that they traded away some of the conveniences and the comforts that made the Evo80 so great. The first issue I would say is minor, but I know there are people out there that absolutely need this key on their keyboard. I personally don't, and that's okay. And this is the end key. So while the 75% layout has most of the keys a person could need, they've opted to keep 3 out of 4 nav keys, and they've excluded the end key. And instead, they've added a little space to add a lighting toggle adjustment button. I don't know why they did that, but that's okay. I think it's a design element. I personally don't use any of those keys, home, page up, page down, or end in the first place. And you could go into VIA and reprogram one of your keys to end, but then you'd have to give up another key. They also didn't include any end keycaps. The Evo80 never had this problem since it's 10 keyless. It has all the nav keys. If you happen to need this key, or if you happen to use all 4 nav keys, this keyboard might be a pass. But if not, then it's really no big deal. The next issue is something much much more glaring that took me a couple of days to figure out. I'd been using it for a couple of days already and something was just feeling a little off, but I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. But after going back and forth between the 80 and the 75 and going through their sales pages, I finally figured it out. And there was a reason that I felt like the Evo75 wasn't quite as comfortable to use as the Evo 80. And that was the front height and the typing angle. I really thought I was just like imagining things. While the difference is small, it actually makes a big difference while typing, because now instead of your wrist being a little more flat, you have to angle it up. So the front height of the Evo75 is 19.3 millimeters. On the Evo 80 is 18 millimeters, which is 1.3 millimeters lower. Now it may not sound like much, but in keyboard terms, you can really feel it after typing for long hours. In addition, the typing angle of the Evo75 is 8, while the Evo 80 is 7. So it's 1 degree steeper. It doesn't sound like much, but if you go 1 degree up on a treadmill, you really feel it. Now, I've been nurturing an injured left wrist for a couple weeks now, actually. And it's something that bothered me as I was using the 75, and I was just taking constant breaks or using speech to text until I finally figured it out. Now, with that being said, I also really like low profile keyboards nowadays. So if tall keyboards are a problem for you, maybe that's something to consider. But the 80 is a lot lower and a lot more comfortable. And last but not least, they made a quality of life downgrade. This feature used to be part of the Evo 80 and it still is, but they took it out of the 75. And that's dongle storage. This makes the dongle super easy to lose since you have to keep it separated from your keyboard when you're not using it, or you have to have it always plugged into your computer. I really feel like they could have cut out a small thing for it somewhere and just plopped it in magnetically. I don't know how hard that is to do, but other companies do it. It's just strange that they added some features but then removed some of the more important ones during the design process. I feel like that is a critical checkbox for any keyboard nowadays. Dongle storage and toggles. You really gotta have those. But even with all these downsides, does the upsides of the Evo75 still make it a worthy purchase? After all, it's still a premium keyboard, it sounds and feels great, and it costs $169. So between the Evo 80 and the 75, there are clear trade-offs. Do you want the lower front height and dongle storage, or do you want the toggle switch and accent lighting? But that's probably not the comparison you're thinking about anyways. After all, you've been waiting for a good 75% keyboard. So between the best 75% keyboard of last year, the Rainy 75, versus the Evo 75, which one will it be? The Rainy is definitely a little bit more cost effective, but it lacks a lot of the substance of the Evo 75. It has a much more simpler design, it's got less switch and color options, and it has no toggle switch. And as far as ergonomics go, the Evo 75 actually is a lot lower than the Rainy. So while EvoWorks did miss out on an easy win by not just making the Evo 80 smaller with the toggle switch, I think the Evo 75 is clearly better than what's available right now. That is, if you're willing to spend a tad bit more and wait a bit longer to get your keyboard. But if you want to learn more about the Rainy 75, you can watch my full review here.